Hello. Today we're going to be reading Serendipity, written by Stephen Cosgrove, illustrated by Robin James. The moral of this story is knowing who you really are will bring you happiness. On an iceberg far south in the Antarctic sat an egg. It was no ordinary egg. It was 4 feet wide, 8 feet tall, and had a distinct pink shade to it. Nobody knew what it was. The penguins and seagulls that lived on the iceberg just assumed that it had been there for a long time. And it probably had. For years and years the egg sat there, stuck in the ice. But then the iceberg began floating north. The days became warmer. Finally, the penguins and seagulls all packed and went back to the Antarctic because they liked cold weather. The egg was left alone on an iceberg that was slowly melting. One day, a curious thing began to happen. The egg that had sat still for so many years twisted and squirmed, crickled and cracked, and finally hatched. There, standing on wobbly legs and blinking her eyes in the bright sunshine, was heaven knows what. She was big, pink, and scared. She stood there for a while, just looking at everything there was to look at. Suddenly, the iceberg rolled with a large wave, and she slid right into the water. She began floundering about, trying desperately to stay afloat. But since she had just hatched, she didn't know how to swim. She was making so much racket with her splashing and thrashing that a big walrus swam over to see what all the commotion was about. "Who or what are you?" asked the walrus. "I don't know who or what I am," she cried. And with that, she flipped herself upside down. She would have drowned right there had the walrus not held her afloat. As quickly as he could, the big walrus taught her how to swim. "Well," said the walrus, "now that you've calmed down a bit, let's see if we can figure out just what you are." He slowly swam around her. She was growing right before his eyes. You're too big to be a tuna and too small to be a whale. You have no feathers, so you can't be a bird. I just don't know what you are," said the walrus. She began to cry and cry. "I must be somebody. Why, I don't even have a name." "I may not be able to figure out what you are, but I surely can give you a name," said the walrus. "From now on you shall be called Serendipity. And as you cannot stay here all alone, you will come with me. I am on my way to the Island of Capri, where all the fish from all over the world are to meet. Possibly they can decide what you are and what you are to do." Since Serendipity had nowhere else to go, she set out with the walrus for the Island of Capri. They swam and swam into the warmer waters of the Atlantic Ocean. Every day, Serendipity grew just a little bigger, until the walrus was constantly swimming in her shadow. One day, as they were hurrying on their way, they heard cries for help just over the horizon. The two of them quickly swam to investigate. There, right before them, was a dolphin trapped in a floating net. "How did you get caught in that net?" asked Serendipity. "I was swimming to the island of Capri," said the dolphin, "when a fisherman threw his net upon me. Now he has gone for help to load me into his boat." Serendipity turned to the walrus. "Should we try to help the dolphin, or should we hurry on our way?" "Always help where you can, Serendipity," said the walrus, "for as your name suggests, you will always find valuable things you are not looking for." Serendipity and the walrus set about trying to free the dolphin. But while they were busy at their tasks, the fisherman and his friend came back to their net. "What are you doing here?" shouted the fisherman. "Get away from my net!" And with that, he tried to throw something at the walrus, who was cutting the net with his tusks. Without thinking of her own safety, Serendipity swam over to the boat. With a mighty heave, she flipped it over, throwing the fisherman into the water. The fisherman sputtered about in the water, so Serendipity very carefully lifted them up and placed them on the overturned boat, where they hung on for dear life. In the meantime, the walrus had freed the dolphin, and the three quickly swam away. "I am indebted to you," said the dolphin as they rested, "for saving me from the fisherman." The dolphin looked at Serendipity and said, I know the walrus, for he is a cousin of mine, but I've never seen anything like you before." "I don't know who or what I am," Serendipity said, "but the walrus is taking me to the island of Capri, where all the fish of all the world are meeting. They will decide what I am and what I should do." The three had swum for over 2 days when suddenly the water began to turn dirty and brown. Paper cups and bottles bobbled in the sea around them. The farther they swam, the more garbage there seemed to be, and oil floated freely on the top of the water. "What is all this?" asked Serendipity. "Unfortunately," said the dolphin, "we must swim close to the land on our journey, and the land dwellers throw their garbage into the sea." By this time, they were unable to move at all because of all the garbage and junk floating on the water. "Shouldn't we dive low and swim away from all this?" asked Serendipity. She looked a little silly, for she had a banana peel stuck on her nose. "No," said the walrus. "Running away won't help the water or any of the fish that live in it." Over the past few days, Serendipity had grown bigger and bigger. She now towered over the walrus and the dolphin. Because she was so big, she had more garbage and oil on her than the other two put together. To rid herself of all that dirt and grime, she began bobbing up and down in the water. In doing so, she created large waves that rolled onto the shore. Finally, as she took one last dunk, she made such a large wave that it carried all the oil, all the garbage, and all that junk and threw it right up onto the shore and on top of all the land dwellers who had thrown it into the sea to begin with. The dolphin and the walrus laughed and cheered to see all that garbage leave the sea. "Oh, Serendipity," chuckled the walrus. "I'm sure the land dwellers will think very hard before they throw garbage into the sea again." With the way clear before them, the walrus, the dolphin, and a proud Serendipity once again set off for the island of Capri. After a long and tiring journey, they finally arrived at the island of Capri. There they found all the fish from all over the world. It was quite a sight to see. There were giant whales, tiny shrimp, chunky tunas, and slippery salmon, just to name a few. "We must leave you now," said the walrus and the dolphin, "for we have much to do." And with that, they swam away from Serendipity into the milling crowds of fish. "Well," thought Serendipity, "I'm never going to find out what I am by staying here. I must move to the front and ask the leaders of all the fish." She bumped and pushed her way to the front, and there, to her surprise, were her friends, the walrus and the dolphin. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "We are the leaders of all the fish," they answered. "But why hadn't you told me before? I have come all this way only to find out that you are the ones who would tell me who or what I am," Serendipity cried. "Serendipity," said the dolphin. "We encountered many dangers on our trip here, and you overcame them all. In doing so, you have discovered that you are brave and kind, and that is what you are." "As to who you are," said the walrus, "you are Serendipity, and like your name, you always gain riches that you have not sought." "Now that I know who and what I am," said Serendipity, "what am I to do?" "As you are now the largest of all the fish from all over the world," said the walrus and the dolphin, "we hereby proclaim that you shall be the guardian of all the seas. It shall be your duty to protect the waters of the world from the land dwellers and to make sure that the oceans stay clear and blue. If you ever throw your garbage in the ocean, lake, or sea, you'd better start rowing, for there will be serendipity." The end. And that's it for today's episode of Story Time with Jen. We will see you tomorrow.